Hey, friend, when was the last time that you were excited for a school meeting? I mean, sincerely. When you think about school meetings, do you get a knot in your stomach? Do you feel nauseated? Do you stare at the ceiling for nights beforehand, thinking and playing through who's going to be at the table? What are they going to say? What have they said in the past? You know what? We've all been there. We've all been there because when we start talking about our children and their progress, it's very personal. And so when we think about those pieces, it can have some physical feelings that we have. And then we also think about what did we go through as a child, like for school. So if school was difficult or stressful for you to be in the building, you could be carrying some of that with you into those meetings. So we're going to talk about today about flipping that for you, though. I'm going to give you a strategy. In fact, I'm going to tell you to say this and not that and give you 3 winning strategies for your next school meeting. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? Because we all want to do what's best for our kids. And when we're able to communicate with the adults that spend most of their time with them, that can be so powerful. I'm going to teach you how what you say and how you say it can shift the outcome of your next school meeting. And rest assured, you don't need to be an expert in special education law. You just need the right words and a confident presence. Grab your notebook and your favorite highlighter and pen. I know you have them, and let's get started. Welcome to the Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for dyslexia education and community. As moms, we want the best for our children, and when you're raising a child with dyslexia, that journey comes with unique twists and turns. Each week, we dive into dyslexia topics along with episodes on how to thrive in your dyslexia season as a mom, all with the goal of helping your child and your family thrive. Tune in for conversations that will inspire, inform, and connect you with a community that truly understands. You are not alone. We're in this together. Subscribe now and join in the conversation and community. You got this. So to win in school meetings, the power of language and what you say and how you say it and your mindset around that is all essential. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the power of language in a school meeting. So think about the last school meeting you attended. And think about the language. Think about the things you said, the things you heard. And when you're thinking about the role you are in now, you are in the role of your child's advocacy. So you're shifting that mindset from, I'm just a mom showing up for a parent conference. You are now your child's best advocate. You know your child, where they struggle, where their strengths are, better than anyone else. And although we use certain phrases that can be unintentional for shutting down collaboration, it happens. Certain things that we can say or position ourselves can shut down a whole collaboration and not only shift the meeting, but shift future conversations. So your language matters. How you say it, what you say, and your attentiveness at the meeting as it relates to your body language and things of that nature. So let's talk first through some real world examples of say this and not that. And let me just give you a little disclaimer. We've all said the wrong thing. It's going to happen either in the past or in the future. You're going to look back and think, I shouldn't have said that, or when I said that, this happened, right? It's going to happen. But I want to break down some common phrases that people use at meetings and give you some alternate, more powerful statements to make instead. All right. So we're going to start with not that, say this. That's the way it's going to go. So first, let's start with the first example. I'm not sure you're the experts. Instead, say, I'd love to understand how this decision supports my child's learning profile. That's powerful, right? And don't worry, if you don't get all these examples written down or you're in a space where you can't write these down, they'll be in the show notes at dyslexiamomlife.com. I'll leave a link in the podcast description, and you can click over there and grab all these examples for some alternative ways to say things. All right, some other real-world examples. Number 2, Okay, if you say so. Instead, say, can you show me data that supports that recommendation? So instead of just kind of rolling over and saying, sure, I guess, you're asking for a data-driven result. Number 3, well, we'll try that and just see. Instead, say, let's set a timeline to review progress and make adjustments if needed. This one is especially powerful if you're trying a recommendation for an accommodation that maybe you don't think your child's going to be successful with, but the school really does, and vice versa. Then set a timeline. Those measurable pieces are so powerful when you're talking about data and timelines to really see the progress and is it making a difference. But think about timeline has to be long enough to actually see a difference. So have that communication with them as well. Number 4. Oh my goodness. Number 4. She's lazy at home too. Oh, let's not talk about lazy, right? I mean, that can really get the debate going here today. But let's not put lazy with anything our child does, right? There are lots and lots of reasons why our children struggle, and lazy is probably at the very bottom of the list. Instead, and it's not productive in a school meeting, right? Because then they're going to start echoing back to you, well, you said she's lazy. That's why she's not doing her homework, right? So you also don't want to give information in a negative connotation that then they can use back to you later, right? Well, you already acknowledged she's lazy. So instead, we're going to say, she's struggling. What supports can we add to help her succeed? You could say she's struggling to learn those multiplication facts. What are things we can do at home for strategies to help her be successful? What are pieces that you're doing at school that maybe we can do the same at home so she can be successful? And the 5th example, this is overwhelming. All right, that is probably 100% true, but not 100% helpful. Instead, say, can we walk through this step by step together? So you're going to feel that overwhelm. You're going to feel it all over your body. And when you feel it, sometimes you do feel like you need to voice it. This is too much. You're sitting in a meeting with 10 people and it's you and maybe one other person with you, and you're feeling outnumbered and you're feeling attacked sometimes. And sometimes you just don't understand the verbiage of education. We have lots of acronyms and lots of things we say as educators that if you don't live in that space, and even if you do, to be honest, when you move into the education space, into special education space, the verbiage is still different. So instead of throwing your hands up, this is overwhelming, and storming out of a meeting, I can see that, right? I'm sure we've all been there. Instead, say, can we walk through this step by step? I really need to walk through this with you, right? And then that also gives you some language around working together, working in collaboration, showing that you value what their feedback is. Just so many good pieces there. So before we move on to some other strategies that I want you to think about, I want to talk for a moment about mindset. I really need you to think through how you want to show up. So my stance has always been and always will be, if you listen to the podcast, you've heard it before, which is we can't go into a meeting, any conversation with a mindset that the educators are your enemy. Your child will pick up on that. That will impact the way your child interacts at school, which is vital, right? But the other piece is, these are the adults that spend the majority of their day with your child. So we want them in the seat in the bus with you, all right? But I also need you to hear that you deserve a seat at that table. So when you're having conversations, just like I gave you some examples a few minutes ago about how to reframe what you say, right? You need to also know that you are at the table. You're not being difficult. You're being deliberate. And we're going to talk about some strategies in a moment, how to help you do that. So you've got to reframe how you walk into that room. So write down maybe, let's say, 3 things your child is great at before the meeting. This will center you as your child's advocate on their strengths. So think about your child in the best possible light you can. Many times our meetings are about the negative, but they don't have to be, right? Maybe your child is struggling with multiplication. Maybe your child is struggling to read. What else is she doing that she's doing fantastic at? And can some of those strategies be used in other areas that she's struggling in? All right, so once we think about what we're saying and we think about these mindset tips, then next I want to give you a few strategies. So, to win at school meetings, we need to focus on three things: active listening, clear communication, and collaborative problem solving. When we ramble on at meetings or we present information passively, which was many of those examples I gave you earlier, the okay if you say so, well, you're the expert, well, let's just try and see. When you say things that way, they're very passive. They're very, just kind of filler, right? Let me just throw something in there. But if you can frame your thoughts in a way that encourages participation and builds consensus, that will really help you. Instead of saying, we need to address this, you could say, what are your thoughts on how we can best approach this? So can you imagine, think about it from the other person's perspective, because I get that you're in a room with educators, but at the same time, we're human. And so when we say things in a way, many times unintentionally, we can put someone on the defense, and that's never going to be a productive meeting. So instead of coming in saying, we need to address these things, you can say, what are your thoughts on how we can best approach this? It is a complete game changer as to how you approach things. So let me give you some examples of these three strategies. So when we think about the pieces that we can do, so again, try to organize your thoughts into clear, concise formats. You might want to use bullet points or a numbered list. It's helpful for you to walk into a meeting with having put some thought into things. Now, this episode is going to release in April, and so I know there's a lot of end of the school year meetings where we're talking about where your child may be, thinking about next school year, transitioning into the next grade level, making recommendations for summer, for school for next year. But you also may be seating. You may also be sitting in the seat where for the first time you're hearing your child's going to be retained. Boy, that's a difficult conversation, right? And you may be in a situation where you're having your first meeting about an initial eligibility meeting. That's what I'm trying to say. Where you're having those conversations about whether your child is eligible for accommodations and additional school support, right? So you could be sitting at different places, but what I want to say to you is it doesn't matter. Winning at school meetings is all the same. Active listening, clear communication, and collaborative problem solving. If you can get those three things honed in, you're going to not only have more productive meetings, but your child is going to have more productive education because you're going to have things in place that will help them win at school and at home. So the first thing I would do is think about what are some things that you want to know and do some quick bullet points. You don't need to write out talking points or, say things this way. You just need to think about these are the three things I want to hit on. Maybe one of them is struggling with multiplication. Maybe one of them is, I'm having trouble with attention at home on some homework assignments. Can we walk through? This is taking 3 hours. Is that the intent, the homework period of time we're spending? So putting out a few bullets that you can say, hey, I've got some talking points I really want to share when we get to the place that's appropriate, right? Or you have those. So as you're having the conversation, you can glance down to see, am I hitting those big topics? So, and when you think about those points, then also think about, the reasoning behind. So if you have a request, make sure everyone understands the why behind your what. So if you, for example, let's talk about homework. If homework is taking 2 hours and the teacher says, wow, it should really take her about 30 minutes. So the what obviously is the length of homework, but the why behind it, right? It's taking 2 hours, so she's going to sleep later, or it's It's causing us not to have any family time. It's causing her not to have opportunities to really enjoy things that we normally would do as a family. Like talking around those pieces can be important. And it's important too to ask questions and to really listen to those other options, because you really want to build a consensus among the people that are at the table. So when you're asking questions, like I shared earlier, what are some steps we can walk through together? What supports can we put in place for my child to be successful? Talking through those pieces in a different way will really help get a consensus on building what we need to do next as a team with you and your educators. Whether there's one teacher or 5 teachers, it doesn't matter. And ask questions. Ask questions if you don't understand, because you don't want to walk away not understanding what's happening. And I would also encourage you with your bullet points or your checklist is, when you're walking through a meeting, is summarizing the key points. So let's say you talk about math and you're finished with math. So before we move to ELA or English, can I summarize what I heard for the math piece? So what I'm hearing is she's really struggling with her 4 times table. And we've decided as a group, we're going to try 1, 2, 3, right? So make sure that you're understanding and that they're understanding, that you're all on the same page. There's nothing worse than to get an email later or a document that's finalized and it doesn't look like what you discussed, because you and the other parties heard something different, right? And a piece that's important too when we talk about clear communication and active listening is those nonverbal cues, that body language. So stay engaged with how people look. Are they fidgeting? Are they nodding? Do they look just confused? And if so, then adjust the way you're communicating. What is your style saying? How are you sitting in the chair? How is your tone? Try looking at those pieces as well. And where you can, if you can keep things away from conflict happens. But if you can think of how to kind of flip the script, like we talked about earlier, and bring things at a different light, having the conversation, the teacher might not know it's taking you 2 hours to do homework, and her expectation might have been like, it should really take the longest 30 minutes, right? And if you come into the room, how dare y'all assign my child 2 hours of homework? That's not going to be the direction that's going to be most helpful for you and your child. And so really focusing on like what are the things that we want to do. So when we create those clear bullet points, that clear kind of agenda of what you want to accomplish at your meeting, that can really help you when you think about things from a positive tone. And I get it. It's hard, right? Because once we get at a place where we're trying to advocate for the best of our child, and if we're in a situation where people don't understand dyslexia or other dyslexic sisters, as I call them, other co-occurrences, it can make those meetings very difficult, right? Because you learn early on, especially like we said earlier, the comment was she's lazy at home too, would indicate someone around the table has said, well, I just don't see that she, and they may not say lazy, but they might, they may say that she's not really paying attention, or she doesn't really seem to care about her work. And so, those are hard things to hear. So when you have that clear agenda or that clear bullet points of what you want to accomplish, what you want to be heard, that you summarize key points as you go along, that helps everybody stay engaged, but it also helps your brain keep to the task of, okay, what am I hearing? What do I need to follow up on? And asking what we call open-ended questions really helps everyone to participate and share their perspectives. So open-ended questions just mean that you're open to hearing their feedback, instead of it being what we call a leading question, which is it has a yes/no answer, right? And so when you open up to have conversations about, what would support this, or how can we best do this for the child, or what are some other, interventions we can try, or what would you suggest we try? Having those, or tell me more about that, right? Maybe they say, well, maybe they do use the word lazy. Maybe they do use the word not paying attention. Well, tell me more about that. When is she exhibiting that she's not paying attention? Is it always in math class? So what does that tell us as a team, right? So asking those questions to tell me a little bit more about that. How often is that happening? Tell me a little bit more about that. And so that will also lead to encouraging really good dialogue and feedback. And then one thing that's big too is being mindful of time and schedules, because everyone has set aside time to be there. So when you're making those summaries and keeping that meeting moving, people really respect that and appreciate that. They are there for you and your child, but at the end of the day, they also have other responsibilities outside of that. And I know sometimes it's easy to get in a meeting and feel very one-sided about, you're here for as long as I need you to be. And I'm going to raise my hand. There have been times that I've taken an extra 10, 15 minutes of a meeting, or I've tried to schedule the last meeting. So if I needed to go over, but, I really try to think about, being respectful to the other person. And if you need to put a pin in something to say, you know what, we didn't get to all the points today, but I want to be mindful of the time we have together today. So if we need to take a pause and reschedule, or we need to come back together via email to clarify a few steps, that will give so much credibility to the conversation and so much respect in the room that people will go, almost out of their way to be helpful. Again, not that you have to do certain things to gain respect, but at the end of the day, everybody is human, right? So we have, people have responsibilities outside of school, and you are the same way, right? Like if the school has given an X amount of time for this particular meeting, and you've got a child to pick up at daycare, or you've got to run back to work, like keeping that meeting moving and on track is helpful to everyone, and being mindful about that time is so helpful. When you end the meeting, if you haven't heard one yet, then you need to ask, like, what is the next steps here? What are our next steps, and what do we need to know? And at the end of that, usually you'll have some type of follow-up communication with the school. They may send you, a service plan to sign, or an IEP or 504 plan that's finalized. It may be that they're giving you information about summer school or summer remediation. There may be some type of follow-up conversation there. But at the end of the day, when we think through, like, how do we move, and I hear lots of parents say it's just so stressful and it's so overwhelming, and I'm not sure what the rules are, right? Like, what are the rules I'm supposed to be playing in? And when you think about communication at its core, you can win at school meetings when you focus on active listening, all right? And active listening means body language, tone, leaning in, taking notes, like actively engaging, not what am I going to say next, right? Because a lot of times our brain gets into the motion of, okay, they said this, I got to say this, right? And sometimes you just need to sit back and listen. And that clear communication with those clear bullet points you have of, these are the 3 things, and it could be 5, it doesn't matter, but these are the points I need us to discuss today. And then having that collaborative problem-solving mindset. And so it may take you having some, journaling opportunities to think through how you want to show up. But I would say 2 things to close us out today. One is that collaboration, that relationship you have with the school is going to be vital. And that doesn't happen overnight. I can say from our own experiences, we're at a brand new school this year, and I am commuting 3 hours a day round trip to work. My husband's commuting over an hour each way. And so we have very limited time to have, we're not volunteering at school and things of that nature to be seen. And so we have to be very deliberate about how we are showing up, right? When we're showing up and supporting the school and the teachers. And better yet, building those relationships and conversations, because that relationship is vital to our children. The other piece that kind of leads right into that is you are your child's first role model. So how you regulate your emotions, how you present yourself at a meeting, how the people in the room feel when they walk out of the meeting, you're setting a role model for your child. And so, and I get, like, this is some tough love, people. I get it, friend. Some tough love. And I'm right there with you. I am just right there with you. I'm an educator who is also a mom, and there are days that I could have acted better, right? We're all going to be there. But I think if the majority of the time we show up in the right space, right, with the right mindset to do the right work, and like I said, how I started this conversation today is, if everyone in the room has your child's best interest, it's going to go fine. When we get sidetracked to our own agendas or how we feel, right? Then that's when it changes. So I would say building that relationship, it's not the one meeting. It's not this meeting. It's a continuous collaboration of meetings and conversations and emails and phone calls. It is how you show up in every interaction. What type of relationship do you want with your school? And it is hard sometimes because you will run into educators that do not understand dyslexia. And you can explain things to them and help them understand how your child can thrive in a respectful way. The other piece of that is it is a constant conversation. The other piece of that is your child is watching. And I have seen it go the wrong direction. I have worked on both sides of the coin with parents and with districts and the U.S. government. And when we get on the other side of that, our children do not want to go to school. Our children talk back to teachers. That it just leads to a very negative day for them. And they are constantly on alert of what is this teacher going to do today that I can tell about. Right. So it almost becomes a different conversation because then it could become an attention-seeking conversation for your child. And none of us want that, right? You want your child to be happy. You want your child to enjoy school. We know school is a struggle, right, for dyslexics. But at the end of the day, you role modeling how to speak to another adult is gold. And that, my friend, also helps your child develop social skills and develop how they should speak to their friends, their teachers, and their bosses going forward in their life. And so how we show up daily is always a lesson for our kids. So if anything else, if you're in a place where it is hard, and I get it, it can be, there can be particular days or years where it's hard with particular people at the table. It is okay if you're at a place and you're like, you know what, I need to take a break. If you think you're going to say or do something, or you just need to collect yourself for a minute, you got to take some deep breaths so you can get back into your thinking brain, because once your brain switches over to the emotion brain, it's all about science, right? Then your thinking brain shuts down. And when that happens, that's just bad for everybody. And it happens because the majority of our day, our brain is trying to figure out, is this a threat? Do we need to freeze, flight? What do we need to do here, right? Do we need to fight? Do we need to leave? And so our brain does that to protect us. And so when we're thinking about how can we best position ourselves to really say the right thing and to have the right strategy, because at the end of the day, you want to have a productive meeting. You want to find out what is working well, where are the struggles, and then we need a plan. We need a plan. We want our kiddo to be successful. The school wants your child to be successful. They are very much invested in your child. And so having those conversations is so, so important. So I hope this conversation was helpful. I know I gave you some tough love in some places, but just know it is a journey, right? This is a marathon. Every day is going to be, different. And if we are aware that we're listening and we're engaging and we're nodding and we're having eye contact and we're present and we do everything we can do to kind of talk ourselves through, what this might look like, it's going to be a win-win. It's going to be a win-win. You may walk away with a different plan than you thought you were going to have, and that's okay. That is okay. It happens, and that is okay. So that is all I have for today's episode. I hope this episode was helpful. If it was, please share this episode with another mom. I'm sure she needs to hear it. And if you're loving the podcast, I'd be so grateful if you left a review on Apple Podcasts so more moms can find us. And until next time, remember, and I'm cheering for you every step of your journey and every school meeting that you attend. You got this.